Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into a career path you've probably dreamed about, becoming a flower and garden specialized seller. You know, the one where you're surrounded by the scent of fresh blooms all day long.
The dream for many, for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But before you trade in your work shoes for gardening boats, we're going to dig into a career guide from RoleCatcher to see if the reality actually lives up to the daydream. Now, forget those super generic job descriptions, because RoleCatcher is all about giving you the full picture, thorns and all.
Yeah, they really go way beyond just scratching the surface. The level of detail they provide is really impressive, from career progression all the way to interview prep.
So no more of that vague, must-love long walks in the garden stuff.
No way. They get into the nitty-gritty. They make it clear that this isn't just about knowing your petunias from your pansies. It's about being a trusted advisor to your customer.
Okay, now I'm interested. So tell me more about what RoleCatcher says about the actual day-to-day role of a flower and garden specialized seller. What's it really like beyond just that idyllic image?
Well, they paint a picture of someone who does way more than just ring-up sales. It's more like plant matchmaking. You're helping customers select the perfect plants for their needs, their space, and even their skill level.
So less about pushing products and more about sharing your expertise.
Exactly. RoleCatcher says a big part of this role is problem solving and making a real connection with customers who share your love for plants.
Now that sounds a lot more rewarding than just, trying to sell whatever happens to be in bloom at the moment.
Absolutely. RoleCatcher really highlights that personal touch as a key part of this job.
It makes you wonder, though, does all that personalized attention actually translate into a work environment that's as nice as the plants themselves? What does RoleCatcher say about that?
Well, it's not always sunshine and roses, though I will say that the guide definitely emphasizes the possibility of that.
Okay, so give me the reality check here. Does RoleCatcher mention any thorns amongst the blooms when it comes to the actual work environment?
You know, they do. Hauling heavy bags of soil, wrangling unruly vines. It can definitely be physically demanding. They even mention that greenhouses can get kind of steamy sometimes. You know, it's not all air-conditioned comfort in this job.
Yeah, you're not just like, I don't know, carefully arranging delicate orchids all day. That's
Yeah.
definitely something to consider. But what about the positives? Any perks that balance out all that heavy lifting?
Oh, absolutely. RoleCatcher talks about this really awesome sense of community you find in this field. Like, you're interacting with other plant lovers all day long, whether it's your customers, your suppliers, local growers. They even have this example of, I think it was a junior sailor, who built this really great relationship with a local landscape designer, which opened up all kinds of new sales opportunities.
That's amazing. So you're not just selling plants, you're becoming a part of this whole thriving ecosystem.
Exactly. And this actually ties into a big industry trend that RoleCatcher highlights: sustainability.
And that's something I'm really interested in. So tell me more about how that plays into this role.
Well, RoleCatcher explains that there's this huge and growing demand for organic practices, eco-friendly products, locally sourced plants, and they're saying it's not just a niche market anymore. It's like a total shift in how people are approaching gardening these days.
So you're not just recommending a fertilizer, you're actually helping customers find choices that are good for the planet and their gardens.
Right. A RoleCatcher stresses that a flower and garden specialized seller isn't just keeping up with trends, they're, actively shaping them. They even gave a cool example: a senior seller who actually helped their shop transition to using completely biodegradable pots and packaging.
Wow. Okay, so we've talked about the day-to-day, the work environment, even the bigger picture of sustainability. Now let's get down to the, shall we say, the nitty-gritty, the pros and cons. And it seems like RoleCatcher doesn't shy away from either, right?
No, they really don't. They lay it all out there, which I appreciate.
Okay, so hit me with the highlights. What are the biggest perks of this career path, according to RoleCatcher?
Well, you already touched on one of the big ones: the creativity. RoleCatcher really emphasizes that artistic side of the job, like whether you're designing really cool displays or helping customers plan their dream gardens or even just arranging, a simple bouquet. There's just tons of room for self-expression.
That's awesome. Such a nice contrast to a lot of other careers out there. And speaking of, what about the flexibility factor? Because I imagine this isn't your typical 9-to-5 office gig.
Nope, you got it. RoleCatcher actually points out that a lot of flower and garden specialized sellers have pretty flexible schedules, especially if they work in a smaller shop or a nursery. And they even say you might be able to set your own hours around peak gardening seasons or customer demand, which is pretty cool.
Okay, I'm already picturing myself Enjoying my morning coffee in a greenhouse full of ferns.
Yeah.
It does sound pretty idyllic.
Mhm.
But I know RoleCatcher wouldn't be doing their job if they didn't mention the downsides too, right? So what are some of the thorns that we should be aware of?
Right. Well, we talked about the physical demands already, but another big one is the income potential.
Okay, so maybe this isn't the path to becoming a gazillionaire.
Well, RoleCatcher is very upfront about the fact that, those entry-level salaries can be pretty modest. They even suggest maybe supplementing your income when you're first starting out, especially as you're building up your clientele.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing experience plays a big role in earning potential then.
Oh, 100%. And RoleCatcher actually provides some really helpful examples of what a typical career progression might look like, which I thought was really cool.
Oh, yes, the career ladder. I always find this part so fascinating. So walk me through it. What does a typical trajectory look like in this field, according to the guide?
So usually you'd start as what they call an entry-level seller, focusing on customer service, just basic plant care, really learning the ropes on the retail side of things. And they had an example. It was an entry-level seller who took it upon themselves to study for their certified floral designer certification, which I thought was really impressive. Talk about initiative.
Now that's dedication. So what comes after that?
Well, from there, you might move into a junior seller role where you're taking on a lot more responsibility.
And according to RoleCatcher, that means.
Think, like more in-depth consultations with customers, you're managing inventory, maybe even training new hires. And RoleCatcher really emphasized that at this level, it's super important to understand supplier relationships, which makes sense. You're getting more involved with the business side of things.
Yeah, it sounds like you're really starting to blossom in this role. So what's like the top? What does a true flower and garden specialized seller rock star look like?
Well, RoleCatcher describes senior sellers as like the heart and soul of a shop or nursery.
Okay, now you've got me intrigued. Tell me everything. What sets them apart?
They're not just experts in, plant care and customer service, but they're also like savvy business people.
Yeah.
The example RoleCatcher gave, this person had actually started out as a landscape designer, so they brought like this whole other layer of expertise to the job.
Wow, talk about a dream team combination. So they're managing teams, coming up with strategies, maybe even, putting in those bulk orders for the biodegradable pots we talked about.
Yeah, totally. RoleCatcher really makes them sound like visionaries, like they're shaping where the business goes and they're always staying ahead of the curve when it comes to new trends in the field. They're not just, plant lovers, they're leading the way in this whole growing industry.
This is giving me so many ideas. Okay, so let's say someone listening is totally on board now and thinking, sign me up. Where do I even start? What does RoleCatcher have to say about the skills and experience that are like really essential for breaking into this field?
Well, they really stress that hands-on experience is key. Like they suggest maybe volunteering at a nursery or even just getting your hands dirty at, a local greenhouse to really learn the ropes.
So does that mean like real world experience is more important than, say, getting a fancy degree in this case?
Yeah, I think it definitely can be, especially when you're first starting out. RoleCatcher even shares a story of this really successful senior seller who got their start just volunteering at a community garden.
That's so cool. It just goes to show that passion and putting in the work can really get you far. Okay, so what about certifications? Are those a must-have for landing a job as a flower and garden specialized seller?
Well, RoleCatcher actually addresses this right in their FAQ section. They say that certifications aren't always a requirement, but they can definitely give you a leg up, especially as you, move up in your career.
It's like leveling up your expertise.
Exactly. It shows potential employers you're serious about what you do. And they even mention some specific ones, like the Certified Floral Designer credential, which they say can help you get into those like more specialized roles.
Oh, it sounds like there's always something new to learn in this field.
Absolutely. RoleCatcher really emphasizes that a good flower and garden specialized seller never stops, learning new things, whether it's new plant varieties, those eco-friendly practices we talked about, even just design trends. You got to stay on top of it.
And let's not forget those super important people skills.
Oh, yeah, you're totally right. RoleCatcher makes a big deal about how crucial those are, things like clear communication, really good customer service, and just like that ability to build genuine relationships with your fellow plant lovers.
It's like the perfect blend of nature and nurture for plants and people.
I love that.
Okay, so we have dug up so much amazing information today, from like the everyday reality of this job all the way to the bigger picture of sustainability and building a career, what would you say is the most important takeaway for someone who's seriously thinking about becoming a flower and garden specialized seller?
Honestly, I think it comes down to this. It's not just a job, it's a calling. Like RoleCatcher really drives home that point. They're saying that to be successful in this career, you have to really love plants and you have to love working with people and you have to be willing to always keep learning new things.
It's about finding that joy and helping things grow, whether it's a garden or, even your own career.
Beautifully said. And actually, speaking of growth, RoleCatcher points out that this career path can really lead to some big things.
So is that dream of opening up your own plant shop actually achievable?
Oh, yeah, totally. They have several examples of flower and garden specialized sellers who went on to do just that. Like they opened their own shops or they started really successful landscaping businesses. Some even became consultants for the industry.
Wow, so many possibilities. It's not just about selling plants, it's about like cultivating a whole world of opportunity.
Exactly. It's all about finding your own way to, bloom in this amazing field.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, this has been incredibly eye-opening. Honestly, I'm kind of ready to put down my laptop, pick up a trowel, and get my hands dirty.
Right.
Before we wrap things up, though, I have one last, thought-provoking question for you. It's something that came up when RoleCatcher was talking about how important it is to stay on top of new trends. So how do you see technology changing the role of a flower and garden specialized seller in the future?
That is such a good question. We're already starting to see technology play a much bigger role in the industry, from, online plant shops to apps that can actually diagnose what's wrong with your plants. It's crazy. I think moving forward, flower and garden specialized sellers are going to need to really embrace technology, to use those tools to boost their own expertise and, connect with customers in totally new ways. Just imagine you could have personalized plant recommendations based on your exact microclimate, or virtual consultations so that people can design their dream gardens with an expert guiding them every step of the way.
It's like having a digital green thumb. I love it. What a cool vision for the future. Well, on that note of all those exciting possibilities, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of the flower and garden specialized seller. A huge thank you to RoleCatcher for putting together such a detailed and insightful guide. If you're feeling inspired to explore this career path and maybe even do a little blooming of your own, we highly recommend checking out RoleCatcher's full guide. It even includes those super helpful interview questions we mentioned. Who knows? This deep dive could be the start of an amazing new chapter in your life.